Hi, this is Ryan Bush with Pacific Reiki. When we talk about meditation, we often focus on the many ways it can improve our lives, like being able to focus deeply, reducing stress, improving our health, and being able to tackle the biggest challenges of life head on without stressing out and getting overwhelmed by the process. However, as someone in my meditation group recently said, there can occasionally be the perception that meditation is a chore or a dry exercise. So I wanted to talk in this video about the many different kinds of joy we can experience during meditation. After all, who doesn't need more joy in their lives? When we are learning to meditate, it can be a lot like the process of learning to ride a bicycle. When we start out trying to ride a bicycle, of course, we're going to fall down a fair amount and may get some bumps and bruises, but we'll gradually get better and better at it and be able to just ride and enjoy the experience, enjoy the wind in our hair, enjoy the process of moving quickly, and enjoy being able to go all kinds of different places that we wouldn't go if we didn't have a vehicle to help get us there. In the same way, the process of learning meditation can take a little bit of effort, especially at the beginning stages when we're likely to get distracted a lot. Fortunately, when we're meditating, unlike with riding a bicycle, we won't get any bumps or bruises. We may get distracted and have to remind ourselves to return to our focus with as much love and compassion for ourselves as we can muster, because it takes a little getting used to be able to focus deeply on one thing. But the better we get at it, the more different kinds of joy we'll experience from the process. One kind of joy that we'll experience is starting to be able to rest in the space in between our thoughts, resting in the space between our emotions and all the different sensations that can arise. Most of the time, we just let our thoughts spin on and on and on, and our emotions and different things that we're paying attention to from all our different senses. And we just assume that's how our mind always has to work, that it'll just constantly be darting all over the place and thoughts and emotions spinning on and on. Various traditions might call this aspect of the mind the monkey mind, because it tends to dart all over the place and easily get distracted. But the more we stay with the process and try to not follow our thoughts and sensations when they arise, the more possible it'll get to rest in the space between our thoughts, resting in the space between emotions and all these different sensations. And an incredible amount of joy can emerge from that process. We start to understand that we aren't our thoughts, we aren't our emotions, we aren't all the different things that we usually identify with in our daily lives. We aren't our work, our family, we aren't our position in the world. We aren't all these different things that we normally take as being our fundamental nature. And during the process of meditation and paying attention in a really deep way to all parts of our lives, we start to realize that we're more than all these different thoughts, emotions, and things we experience. In the space between our thoughts and everything else, this beautiful, beautiful space opens up. We can call this the space between, or the gap between all our thoughts and everything else. And, that's the joy of just experiencing pure being, the joy of experiencing our deepest nature when we're not experiencing thoughts and sensations and everything else. One analogy that comes to mind is it's a lot like paying attention to the sky overhead. A lot of the times there will be clouds. Sometimes it might be so cloudy that we don't even remember that there is a blue sky, especially if we live in a part of the country that is habitually cloudy. But then when the clouds part and we see the blue sky opening up, perhaps we see this brilliant, dazzling sun overhead, we're filled with so much joy just from experiencing that vastness, that space of the spot of the sky when it's not filled with all these clouds. And it's the same way with starting to understand the nature of our mind and becoming acquainted with the deepest parts of ourselves. There's just a huge amount of joy that comes from starting to get to know ourselves at a deeper level. Some other aspects of joy that can come from being able to focus deeply on one thing. During meditation, we'll practice this kind of thing over and over, whether it's paying attention to our breath, paying attention to an object like looking at a candle flame, or feeling prayer beads between our hands, or reciting a mantra, or any of the other different kinds of things we might be focusing on as we're practicing meditation. And once we start to get the hang of paying attention deeply to one thing, we start to experience so much more freedom in our daily life, because we know we aren't just going to be tossed this way and that by all the different things that we might habitually be paying attention to, whether it's our thoughts or all the things that can come up that distract ourselves, especially when we have a phone and internet and social media and a whole world of distractions constantly at our fingertips. When we really get used to being able to focus deeply on one thing, we can apply that in so many different ways in our life. We can pay really deep attention to a task that we're working on, or if there's something that we're paying attention to but don't really want to. For example, if we're extremely upset about something or unable to sleep at night, it's an immense relief to know that we actually can choose to focus on something else. We don't have to focus on whatever is deeply upsetting us at the moment. We can choose to focus on something different, even if it's just paying attention to the sensation of one hand against the other, or paying attention to our breath, or literally anything. A lot of joy comes from that freedom of knowing we don't have to pay attention to whatever thoughts, emotions, or other things happen to come up. So that can be a really beautiful process to experience that kind of liberation. Another kind of joy that can come from being able to pay deep attention to something is learning that we can pay attention to any place in our body, or any place in our mind, or any place in our energy. For example, one of my first experiences of really deep joy from meditation came one day, this was probably 12 years ago or so, when I decided to pay as deep attention as I could for as long as I could to one particular part of my body that I'd never paid attention to before. I happened to choose a place in my upper back on the left side, kind of just inside towards the spine from the shoulder blade, just because I'd never really paid attention to that point before. And so I sat down and I paid attention as close as I could from the inside to that place. And after a few minutes, I started to feel this kind of golden glow in that area of my back, and it gradually expanded more and more to take up my whole body, and it was just an indescribably beautiful process. At the time, it reminded me a lot of an experience that Jill Bolte Taylor describes in her book, A Stroke of Insight. I certainly wasn't having a stroke of any kind, but just paying really deep attention, it opened up this whole world of experience that I had never really thought was possible. So just want to encourage people to try all different kinds of meditation, and we can be surprised at the kinds of beautiful experiences that can arise. Another kind of joy that can arise from meditation comes from the various neurotransmitters or neurochemicals that can be released during certain specific kinds of meditation. There are two glands at the top of the brainstem and kind of the very center of the head. One of them is called the pineal gland, and the other is the pituitary gland. And during certain kinds of meditation that I have talked about in other videos, blog posts, and books, During these specific kinds of meditation, these various neurotransmitters can be released by these glands. The pineal gland can release a chemical called DMT, which is associated with visionary experiences and awakening experiences. And the pituitary gland can release oxytocin, which is often associated with deep experiences of bliss, as well as experiences of wholeness and oneness, joining all opposites and all parts of our body together. And when these neurotransmitters get released, it releases this beautiful spontaneous experience of joy and bliss. Many people from all over the world have described these deep kinds of experiences. And something that's especially important when we're talking about these kinds of experiences is that the joy and bliss that we're talking about here aren't necessarily the goal or the purpose of meditation. They're more like side effects that can happen during the process. And I'm talking about all these different experiences of joy to, encourage people to give meditation a try and to stick with it through any challenges that we might experience. But I don't want to give the impression that the purpose of meditation is to just bliss out and have an escape from reality. And I certainly don't want to encourage people to get really attached to these experiences of joy and bliss. People can get addicted in a psychological sense to chasing after bliss if they misunderstand what all these things are about. And, when I talk about these experiences of meditation, some people can misunderstand and think that's what it's all about. For example, when I started describing meditation to my mom, she thought meditation was about having these experiences of joy and escaping from reality, when it's actually about far more, as I've talked about in other videos and books. There's so many ways that meditation can completely transform our lives and help us live far more effectively in the world than we can otherwise. So joy and bliss are carrots that can encourage us to stick with the process and go deeper with it, rather than the purpose or the end result. Some other aspects of joy that I wanted to mention are the kinds of joy that can come from complete liberation or awakening, as it's often called in various traditions. Countless different wisdom traditions from all over the world talk about experiences where we have a complete transformation of our understanding of who we are and our connection to the deepest parts of ourselves. Some traditions give these experiences names like transcendence or illumination, might give it names like Satori or Moksha. There are countless different names in all different traditions for this. And these are the kinds of experiences, by the way, that the founder of Reiki described during his awakening experience, where he first connected in a very deep way with what Reiki calls the great bright light. So some crucial aspects of joy that are associated with these experiences include the liberation of being free to focus on whatever we want to and not being beholden to all the patterns that we're used to of just focusing over and over again on the same things and just approaching things from the ordinary perspective that we are associated with in our daily lives, or from the lower perspective of obsessively being caught up in fear or anger or stress or any of the other heavy emotions. So liberation and the freedom to go in any direction we choose to is one aspect of joy that goes along with these awakening experiences. Another kind of joy that goes along with these experiences is the joy of, we talked about in learning to ride a bicycle how we can go in any direction we choose to. During meditation, we're not going in different physical directions necessarily, but there's a real kind of joy that comes with being able to concentrate our energy anywhere in the body that we choose to, whether we're concentrating our energy in the hara or our belly, concentrating it in the heart, concentrating in the head, at the crown, or raising our energy all the way from the base of the spine up to the crown of the head and beyond. And, there's a real literal aspect of joy associated with connecting with each of these energy centers. And there's also, as well, I should mention, with connecting with the space above the crown, which is where some of these deepest experiences happen. But the other kind of joy I wanted to mention here is the joy that comes from seeing this light that's talked about. For example, in the tradition of Reiki, we talk about the great bright light, or the daikomyo, as it's called in Japanese. Countless other people who've paid deep attention during meditation have also described similar experiences of seeing a light. This isn't a light out in the world that we're seeing with our eyes open. It's more when we close our eyes and pay close attention, we may start to experience various kinds of light, even with our eyes closed. At first, it is likely to be an extremely faint circle of light. I mean, people can experience all different kinds of things, but many people start out by seeing just a very faint light that would be easy to overlook if we weren't paying close attention. And if we're constantly being busy with our thoughts and sensations and stuff, we just won't notice it at all. But the more we calm our mind, the more we're paying close attention, especially with our eyes closed, we may see this very faint circle of light. It might be a very, very deep purple, almost completely black. But the more we concentrate our energy, and especially the more we pay attention, not at the base of the spine or part way up, but the more we direct our attention up to the very crown of our head, the brighter and larger this circle of light will be likely to get. It can also be helped if we have, if we're experiencing a Reiki session that someone is sharing energy with us, or if we're getting a massage or craniosacral work, osteopathy, network chiropractic. There are countless different ways that we might spontaneously see these patterns of light if we're having some kind of session or treatment being done for us. But anyway, even if we're just in deep meditation by ourselves, the more we concentrate our energy and pay attention to the crown of our head, the more this circle of light will expand and brighten until it fills up our entire field of vision. And that's exactly why the tradition of Reiki calls it the great bright light, because it's an extremely bright light that'll take up our entire field of vision and feel like it's taking up in our entire experience. And we realize we are that light, and everything everywhere is that light. There's no separation whatsoever when we're in that experience of connection with that light. I just also wanted to mention that when we are connecting with that great bright light, it's not that we're physically going anywhere, but when we're raising our energy in that way, that really leads to the deepest experiences of connection with our true self, or our higher self, what other traditions call the Buddha self, Christ consciousness, luminous self, wisdom mind. There are countless names for what we're experiencing and connecting with when we're in that space of connection with the great bright light. So there's a lot more to say about all these experiences and these many different kinds of joy that we experience, but I just wanted to say a little about the many different aspects of joy we can experience during meditation, and just encourage people to stick with it during the early phases of meditation, and just see where the journey takes us, because it's an incredibly beautiful process. As always, if anyone has any thoughts or questions, please let me know. Peace, love, and blessings.